what it does.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Good evening, everyone. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heidi, please note that all the board members are in attendance this evening. At this time, if there's a board member that has a conflict of interest, please report so on any agenda or non-agenda items. Seeing none, we'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Motion by Moulton. Is there a second? By Iverson. We will now hear the financial report from Heidi.
Thank you. In the taxing funds of general capital outlay and special education, we received the final significant portion of the 2022 taxes payable in 2023 in the amount of $865,413. Nutrition Services received other state support revenue in the amount of $80,571, and that is related to the supply chain assistance funds to assist K-12 nutrition operations with increased cost and demands. The ending cash position of $489,000 is below that of the previous year and is anticipated as the program has returned to the regular operation with lowered federal reimbursement rates. LATC had moderate revenue totaling $481,000, consisting of sources received in relation to tuition, state support, sales, interest, and other revenue. A contribution of $3.5 million is expected from the foundation in support of construction in progress of the Diesel and Archway facilities. The ending cash position of $6.5 million reflects an anticipated decrease over the previous 2 years. The bookstore, food service, and educare operations had moderate activity in December, with an expected increase in January with students back on campus. The Employee Benefit Trust had premiums exceed the administrative costs for the month, and the ending cash balance of $3.7 million is holding steady compared to the previous months. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Heidi. All right, we'll turn it over to student and staff recognition. Oh, yeah. Here I thought I was going to get it right this time. We'll take our vote. All those in favor of the approval of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, consent agenda has been approved.
Okay, we've got some oral interpreters here tonight. That's great. So when I call your name, if you would come up, and then one of our board members will have a certificate for you, and then we'll take, if parents want to get a picture while you're getting your certificate, and then just after you grab your certificate, then just file along here, and then we'll get one group shot so we can recognize everybody. So on the state team, Sunny Rader for storytelling. And we'll hold our applause till we get through them. In the serious, Haley Syrie. In humorous, Emily Calamine. In the duo and readers theater, Maddie McDonald. And poetry and readers theater, Josie Altoff. In the non-original oratory, Eric Calamine. Readers Theater, Sam Faust. Duo and Readers Theater, Aiden Regals. Readers Theater, Wyatt Kruger. And Readers Theater, David Lechner. Once David gets up here, we'll take a group shot. That's your state team. Okay, then we have 3 Superior Medal winners. So after we get that group shot, you can sit down, and then we have 3 Superior Medal winners. So in the duel, Aiden Regals and Maddie McDonald. And I think you already got your certificates, but let's smile for the camera. There you go.
Congrats, guys.
And a Superior Medal in Storytelling, Sunny Rader. And Oral Interp Coach, Corrine Calamine. Congratulations to our Oral Interp.
Okay, we will move along to item 3.1. Thank you everyone for coming. Appreciate it. We will move to item 3.1 with public input on any agenda or non-agenda items if there's anyone here to speak from the public. Seeing no one, we will welcome Cam up and start with personnel on item 4.1.1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For personnel, we have for you tonight 1 resignation. We have 1 resignation due to relocation, and we do recommend approval.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the resignation.
Motion by Lohr, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Rossman. Questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion's approved. Item 4.1.2, contract recommendations and addendums.
For your consideration, you will see that we recommend moving an admissions representative from a temporary contract to permanent full-time. You also see that we are recommending change in duties in the energy program supervisor, as well as 3 positions for a temporary part-time, 2 of which are supported through the National Science and Information Grant. And we recommend approval as presented.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Rossman.
Second.
Second by Lohr. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's been approved. Item 4.1.3.
We have, for your consideration, educational stipends for 6 professional instructors at $108 a credit, and we recommend approval as presented.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the stipends.
Motion by Lohr.
Second.
Second by Rossman. Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's been approved. We'll move into property, 4.2.1.
The first item, 4.2.1, is an equipment bid for consideration in support of our energy program. We received 1 bid from Moss Enterprises for 6 mechanical drive training systems in the amount of $125,910. The bid came in under budget and is funded through the GOED grant. The bid met all specifications, and we recommend approving or accepting the equipment bid as presented.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Iverson.
Second.
Second by Moulton. Questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's been approved. Item 4.2.2.
The second item, 4.2.2, is an authority to purchase consideration for a campus security management system from Johnson Controls at an estimated cost of $279,866.48, and the authority to accept alternates up to 10% of the estimated cost. The vendor, Johnson Controls, is identified through Sourcewell, and this will come out of our construction management line item, and we recommend accepted to purchase for the campus security management system as presented.
Is there a motion?
I move approval to purchase the campus security management system as presented.
Motion by Moulton.
Second.
Second by Iverson. Any idea how long that's going to take to complete?
I do not have a time frame
Just
on
curious.
what I don't know.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions, comments?
This is on door security as well, correct?
This is door security. It will also talk with the K-12 system. It changes the security at Garfield School. Also, we'll keep a school bus drop there, which allows the kids to come in and out as well.
Excellent, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion's been approved. Item 4.2.3.
The third item, 4.2.3, is a change order consideration for the Archway Complex. The proposed change order consists of 2 modifications to the project in the amount of $133,284. The majority of the addition for the revisions is made in design on the intermediate level of the complex, so south of Arrow Avenue. The construction contingency was approved at $1,030,000, and the change order adjusts the remaining contingency to $929,771, and we recommend approval of Archway change order number 4.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I move we accept change order number 4.
Motion by Iverson.
Second.
Second by Moulton. Any questions, comments?
So, building project is pretty much on schedule?
It is looking towards an early May now, so it's a little bit behind schedule.
And the glass is kind of the big holdup.
It is, but the glass has really started to come in now. As of recently, you can drive by and see windows going in, but that has been up to this point. And then previously to that, we had about 3 months in getting steel.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion's been approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, we'll move to discussion items for 14.4. Is there anyone here to speak on agenda or non-agenda items from the public? If so, now would be the time to come forward. Okay, we'll move to item 5.2 with the Northeast Tech High School report.
Yes, thanks. This month we do have a meeting of the superintendents. That'll be tomorrow. So if there's anything to update the board on, I will let you know on that. And then a reminder to those board members who are on the full board of Northeast Tech High, that meeting is next Wednesday, the 17th at 5:45.
Thank you. We will move to the budget calendar.
Yeah, the budget calendar is in your packet for review of those dates. One thing to note, we will meet in special session on April 22nd of 2024, and that's the session that K-12 and LATC will go over their budget information. So please note that date.
Okay. We will now move to item 5.4 with the elementary school presentation.
Thank you. Okay. You'll see slides up on the screen behind me, and then each board member, you should have a copy of the slides. But bringing forward tonight to discuss a plan for our elementary schools. So in November, the motion was made to close Roosevelt Elementary. And so in working on how to reconfigure the school district, we've had an elementary committee that has been meeting this fall and are ready to bring forward a plan for how we think we can redistribute the kids. So if you want to click to the next slide, we've got a kind of a timeline, and I just want to remind kind of the board and the public just everything that we've kind of started with. So this really started back in the fall of 2021, where Co-op brought forward to our fall planning session a look at our elementary schools. And then really kind of that stayed in the background until the fall of 2022, when we brought it forward again to the board, and we were kind of charged with how you know, what could this look like. And so then we began really in earnest in January of 23, and you can see a lot of those points on there are in the spring of 2023, where we brought forward something that we called the partner schools, and at that meeting in May, the board ultimately sent it back to administration for further study. And so then our further study happened this fall, where we convened a group of staff and patrons to kind of take a deeper dive into our elementary schools and come up with a way that we can maybe redistribute our students with the closure of Roosevelt. And so what I'm going to present tonight really is kind of a culmination of everything we did last year. We had public meetings where we took comments from the public. We sent out a survey, gathered up those, and have really tried to kind of put this all together into a plan that can be amenable and really takes our elementary schools and provides what we think can be some improvements in some ways, and I'll speak to that in just a minute. So we may reference this slide again, but go ahead and click on the next one. The other thing we tried to do this year is answer some questions that came up along the way, or address some things that people brought forward when we were having these discussions last year. One of them was the birth rate and why we're even looking at this. This chart up here is based off of the Department of Health data that we have, and this takes into account the birth rate of Cottington County. So this is not hospital specific. This is based off of if a baby is born with a Cottington County address, that's what this adds up to. We have typically gotten 70 to 75% of the births have ended up in the Watertown School District. And what you can see is in 13-14 we had a high, at least on this stretch, of 394, and where we're at with our kindergarten numbers is this right in here, this 5-year stretch where 318, 297, 320, 292, 328. And so we have experienced a little bit of a dip in Cottington County with regards to our birth rate, and so that typically translates into less kindergartners coming in, and so that is really what kind of precipitated the need to kind of study our elementary schools and maybe look at a different configuration. So the next slide, this takeaways after further review, these are some things that we felt like really were emphasized and came out of our study that we did last spring. One of them is the opportunities for early childhood. That's both an internal need and it's also an external need, a community need, in that we have waiting lists for our preschools, we have waiting lists for our daycares, and what could we do as a school district to possibly help promote early childhood and really establish a good foothold in our district. I want to point out that as we talk about anything, we appreciate our current preschool providers, and anything that we would be doing with regards to a plan or at the Watertown School District would not be to take away from that, but to try and enhance our community offerings from a preschool aspect. Balanced class sizes is on there. We do have a policy that says that we would try and keep our class sizes at 23 or under at the K3 level, and 26 and under at the 4, 5, 6 grade levels. And nowhere have we discussed at all editing that plan or trying to raise class sizes, but rather try and balance them throughout the district. The consistency of programming continued to be something that we wanted to address as we looked at reconfiguring our elementary schools. Things like special education services, ELL services, Title I services, some of those things, to try and make sure it didn't matter which elementary school you attended, that we had the equal opportunity for access to that. The increase in instructional time really references some of our specialty areas. We had a slide last year that talked about travel time with regards to PE, music, art, counseling, and the plan that we're going to talk about tonight significantly decreases the travel time, so that increase in instructional time really is the opportunity for those specialty area teachers to be more involved at the schools rather than driving between the schools. And then the last two use the word, efficiency. Right now, it's pretty well publicized that the pool of teacher applications is down, both in the state and nationally. And so the more efficient we can be with our staff usage, the better able we are to address any openings we have and to make sure that we put quality educators into those positions. And so trying to be efficient does have some benefits there, along with the fiscal efficiency, and less students translates into less money for our schools. And so by being fiscally efficient, we feel like we are best able to utilize the dollars we are afforded that come from the state funding formula. So that was kind of some of the big takeaways that we carried over from last school year into this school year, and in our studies did that. So what I'm going to present to you tonight is something that we are referring to as the Arrow Early Childhood Plan. And so this next slide is kind of familiar. We use these schoolhouse icons, but what the Arrow Early Childhood Plan would provide is one pre-K kindergarten center at McKinley, and then 3 grades 1 through 4 sites at Jefferson, Lincoln, and Millette. And I'll dig into those just a little bit more, but we think that we are going to answer some questions from people that raised questions last year with regards to some of the things that we're planning on with this. So if you want to go to the next slide, where we outline a little bit more of what is there. And the first question I'll answer is, why McKinley for the early childhood piece? Jefferson and Lincoln are our 2 largest classroom-sized elementaries, and so we'll need the classroom space at those 2 elementaries. And so if you think about then, it's McKinley or Millette. Millette maybe has a more centrally located, it's a more centrally located spot. But one of the things that Millette has is an upstairs with no restrooms. And if you think about putting preschoolers in an upstairs and not have immediate access to restrooms, that became an issue. Currently at Millette Elementary, the upstairs is used for art, music, and a couple of offices. So it's not where students are up there all day and would have that need. So then McKinley really became the site that made the most sense to look at early childhood. So what we would look at housing at McKinley is, and I'm going to actually work from the bottom up on this chart, but kindergarten, we are projecting 10 sections of kindergarten for next year. And then our current junior kindergarten is a half-day offering. We have 1 section of junior kindergarten currently. What we would like to do with this is try and expand that to a full day offering, and we think that would probably mean we would need a second section of junior kindergarten, so having 2 sections of junior kindergarten then, and that would leave us 3 rooms dedicated to preschool. When we talk about preschool, we're mainly talking about 4-year-old preschool. I'll have another slide here in a minute, outlining a little more about digging into a little more of the early childhood piece. But when we really reference preschool, we're talking about 4-year-old preschool, or mainly those children who would be age eligible to attend kindergarten the next year. As we look at this, 12 sections has been a pretty consistent number for our grades in Watertown, and so any planning we've done does account for the possibility that we would have 12 sections, even though our current numbers are maybe lower than that. We only had 10 sections of kindergarten this year, and that's our projection again for next year, but any of our planning has been done with 12 sections in mind. So then as you look at Jefferson, Lincoln, and Millette, what it would look like next year is or what we would plan for in the future would be 4 rooms of first grade, second grade, third grade, and fourth grade at Jefferson, 4 rooms of first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade at Lincoln, and Millette would be a 3-section school, 3 first, 3 second, 3 third, and 3 fourth. So when we go to this next slide, this was a question that came up last year, and that was capacity. So when Co-op Architects did the facility study, they used a capacity percentage, and that seemed to raise a lot of questions amongst our staff and some of the patrons that attended meetings last year, because it took into account classrooms and then gave us a percentage. And so what we tried to do with this slide is show homerooms. So the first column is the school year of 24-25, what we would project. The second column is what is currently in each school. And the third column is the section caps, meaning how big could we account for at the different schools. So if you look at Millette, Millette next year in this plan would have 3 first grade, 3 second grade, 3 third grade, 3 fourth grade, for a total of 12 home rooms. In the school year, this school year, there is currently 1 preschool and then 2 kindergarten through 4th grade, so a total of 11. So you would be increasing the number of homerooms at Millette by 1. And then from a section perspective, Millette would remain as a 3-section school. If we go to Lincoln, currently, next year projected Lincoln at 4 sections of 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th for a total of 16 sections. This year at Lincoln, there are a total of 15. There are 3 of each grade, 3 kindergarten, 3 first, 3 second, 3 third, 3 fourth. So an additional homeroom at Lincoln for next year. I'm going to talk about the section caps in a minute for Lincoln and Jefferson. Next year at Jefferson projected would be 3 first grade, 4 second, 4 third, 4 fourth, for a total of 15 homerooms. And this year at Jefferson, there are 15 homerooms. There are 3 kindergarten through 4th grade. Those section caps, that would be an accommodation. As I mentioned, we are planning for 12 sections. And so if you would add up the numbers, 3 plus 4 plus 4 is only 11 sections. If you used a baseline of Millette as a 3-section, Lincoln as a 4-section, Jefferson as a 4-section. So that 12th section, if we get back to those type of numbers, we have used an alternating fashion with Lincoln and Jefferson in the past when we've reached 13 sections. And so when you look at the 5-4, 5-4, and then Jefferson 4-5, 4-5, it would be that alternating if we're at those 12 section numbers. Lincoln would have a little more, has a couple more homerooms that if we would have the good problem of getting back to 13 sections again, you could fill Lincoln to 5 sections and then utilize Jefferson for a 13th if you needed to. I say that as a good problem because that would mean that we are growing and showing that we need to accommodate more students. And so that would be the basics of the room count. And like I said, this slide is to maybe clarify a little bit more because the percentages that we used last year based off co-op study caused some confusion. And so just so people understand, there would be room to accommodate the students that we have currently in elementary. So let's dig in a little bit more with the early childhood piece. Currently, if a student qualifies for special education services at age 3, we would service them. We would not host classroom space for them, but we would provide the necessary services like speech, OT, PT, those sort of things. The state age for kindergarten is a student must be 5 by September 1 to attend kindergarten. And so when we talk about that 4-year-old preschool, we're really just backing it up 1 year and saying if a student would be 4 by September 1st, they would be eligible for our preschool. So that would be, currently we have special education preschool for 4-year-olds, which is half-day services. We have a Title I preschool, which people qualify based off income. And we would be talking about the possibility that we could expand the numbers of students who are in preschool. And this is where I referenced any expansion. We are not trying to compete with our current private preschool providers. We appreciate them, and what we're trying to do is make sure that if any child in Watertown wants to attend preschool, they have a place for them to go. So we still need and want our other preschool providers to be successful, but we think that our expansion could allow maybe more, and we're thinking maybe in particular there's some in-home daycares where it's just difficult for between a sole daycare provider and then families who are working during the day to access preschool services. So I think that's probably a good place to start. The junior kindergarten. Junior kindergarten in South Dakota, you are eligible for junior kindergarten if you meet the kindergarten cutoff date of 5 by September 1st. And sometimes we do have students who the families and might be some of the screening that we do, and we think that maybe the child is not ready for that kindergarten rigor yet, and so junior kindergarten is currently half day, but we think in this plan we can expand it to full day, which again, some benefits to families where they don't have to worry about that transition in the middle of the day. So having the full day services for those students who are already age 5 would be a benefit, and then we would make sure that at McKinley that we had room to grow to that 12 sections. Thinking ahead, if we were to need a 13th section, that would we would have to take that into account between the junior kindergarten and the preschool classrooms at McKinley. But currently we would only be in need of 10. Some questions that we would have initially, we think, the slide I've got up here, utilize expanded neighborhood transportation. That was one of the first questions I got after the announcement of Roosevelt, which was, would there at least still be a pickup drop-off point at Roosevelt? My short answer is yes. We have maintained one for 20 years at Garfield since that was closed as a regular attendance center. And then we would look at ways to expand and operate so that we might have more. I call it neighborhood because it would be very difficult for us to get door to door. But if we were able to expand some of those in-town options to pick kids up. So thus the term neighborhood. Educare, for those that are not aware, last spring there was a transfer of ownership of Garfield to Lake Area. The old Educare building was actually taken down in order to accommodate the archway project and parking at Lake Area. And so in the 22-23 school year, half of Garfield was being used for Educare. I know that Lake Area is working on plans for possible expansion of that. And so, we see options where, we might be able to be a transportation provider and assist families if they were, say, in preschool in the morning and then they were at Educare in the afternoon for the daycare part of it. The district might be able to provide that transportation. And again, some of that still will be based off of availability of preschool spots and Educare spots, but that is an option. Currently, kindergarten students are not able to attend any of the Boys and Girls Club activities after school, so we would look at what possibilities we might have for kindergarten students in after school care, possibly at McKinley, or again, that might be a partnership with Educare or a conversation with the Boys and Girls Club. We have not had those conversations with them yet, as that's in the coming month here. We really think that having a dedicated early childhood center allows us to identify needs in our students all in one place and provide those interventions that we might need before we send them out to that first grade. And so having the preschool and the kindergarten all at one site, we think is a real bonus to our school district. The final slide is what would be happening at the 1st through 4th grade buildings. Expanded title services for all students. Obviously, what you're doing with Roosevelt closing and turning McKinley into a preschool kindergarten center is you're sending 1st through 4th grade students out from 5 schools to 3 schools. What that does is, it fills those schools in a different way, but then our title services will go from needing to service 5 buildings to 3. Currently, McKinley, Roosevelt, and Millette have a designation that is school-wide title, where if a school reaches 40%, you are eligible for that. So in a school-wide setting, any child at that elementary school could receive services. We don't know that the redistribution would create school-wide opportunities, but what it would do is we think most likely qualify all 3 of the remaining 1 through 4 schools for title services altogether, and that would probably be in what is called targeted assistance, where we would provide the interventionist through our title funding, and then a student would have to qualify for those interventions in order to receive title services. So for example, right now at Jefferson and Lincoln, they share one interventionist, and so you would be able to allocate resources more to those schools so that you could have more interventions available at the 3 schools, rather than right now most of our title dollars are spent at our 3 school-wide schools. So that's a biggie. We would want to make sure that we have room to grow to those 12 sections per grade. And then the balanced services between buildings is referring again to the special education, ELL, Alt Ed, SLC, and then also thinking of PE, music, art, those specialty areas where we would better be able to balance them, have them, the teachers more solely located at an elementary school instead of driving between schools. I mentioned ELL. Currently, our ELL students are at Lincoln because, and that population is growing in Watertown. We have looked at how can we best serve our ELL students, and we think in the transition of the plan, the best way to do that would be to leave the ELL school at Lincoln. And then we think because we would add that 4th section, some years possibly a 5th section, that would allow us to distribute ELL kids across the grade levels without expanding, at least in the initial couple years, to a different school. We have our Lincoln staff has been trained. They have a familiarity, a comfort level with ELL students, and some of the challenges that are with having non-English speakers in your room. And so the plan would be to leave ELL at Lincoln through the transition. And then we have 2 other specialty programs that would be either at Jefferson or Millette. One of them would be Alt Ed, and that generally is for students who maybe have some issues being in the regular ed classroom. A lot of times it's a behavior issue. That would be more of a specialty classroom that would be at one of the 2 remaining elementary schools. And then our structured learning center, which is for again, that's a special education program for students with maybe more high need disabilities, and so that would also be then at the other one. A couple of things, I know there might be some questions from the board. I'll try and answer a couple of them. The next slide is questions, but I'll try and answer a couple that I know have come up. One of them is what would happen with our staff. I know I've got Roosevelt staff that's been wondering that for quite some time. And now McKinley staff is probably wondering the same thing, as are our other elementary schools, and how that would be. That's probably a March discussion with our staff, so a couple of dates to keep in mind. One of them is in the next 6 weeks or so is when our early retirements generally start coming in from our staff. We have a March 1 early retirement deadline for those who are eligible for that from the district. And so we would like to see where some of those might fall. And what we're trying to do is avoid telling staff one thing in January and then having some retirements that cause us to have a different message in February, which then might be a different message in March. We want to do that once with our staff and do that right. So for staff wondering, that probably would be more of a March discussion. And then we have some other dates coming up. We would have some preschool screenings, kindergarten roundup, those type of activities which happen in March and April. So the sooner we have kind of a plan, the easier it's going to be to have those conversations with families as they become, integrated into the district. Another question is boundaries and what does that mean for 3 remaining, you would essentially be moving your district to 3 elementary attendance boundaries. Co-op has helped us with that. They are working on kind of a first look at that. What I would anticipate is when we kind of have that finalized, we would call our elementary committee back together to take a look at the new boundary districts before we would bring that to the board for consideration. For those unfamiliar with how our boundaries are set, we do have a boundary policy in board policy, and so that would need to be updated to address that. And that generally has a first and a second reading. So that would be coming up. So I will stop for a minute and answer any board questions you might have up to this point.
Dr. Danis, can I jump in real quick? Because
Yeah.
I was talking about the boundaries. That's kind of become a little bit of a talking point for the board because it's largely been something that hasn't been addressed in decades, if not longer, and it's something that maybe we need to keep a more consistent flow or routine on going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because the last major revision really was when Garfield closed 20 years ago. And so what we think probably what we would note in our a revision to the policy would be a recommendation. We will give the recommendation, but we would put it in policy to study the boundaries at least every 5 years, if not sooner, so that it doesn't come down to, because what has happened since Garfield closed is we've had major shifts in where new housing has been built, and you have some neighborhoods that maybe used to be full of kids and now they're full of people who probably have as much gray in their beard as I do, and maybe don't have elementary kids in them yet, but they haven't they haven't sold, and the housing hasn't turned over to where it's now full of kids again. And so just kind of some of that study, and it is a little bit of a different world right now in terms of the state of education, the flux of housing, we've got some major initiatives in Watertown for workforce development and things like that. And so, when we bring people in and what types of housing we'll have and where it'll be, I think probably for sure every 20 years is not going to be soon enough. And I think our thought, at least initially, is every 5 years would be a minimum to start looking at that.
Thanks.
One of my questions, in terms of staffing, and there's got to be trepidation among staff members. But how many elementary teachers did we hire last year and the year before?
Ooh, good question. I will address the trepidation part first, because I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know the numbers to the other part, so I may not have an answer for you. But one thing we've talked about with staff is our goal, and I said it last spring, our goal is if we have people who want to work for the Watertown School District, we want to keep them. And that's one of the reasons why we would like to see maybe where some of our retirements might happen before we start determining a plan for the staff, because our goal is, so in this, with the state, statutes, April 15th is another date to remember. That would be when we would have to notify staff of non-renewals or reduction in force. Our goal is to get to April 15th and not have to utilize that because we know that we do have, 10% is a pretty industry average in terms of turnover, and we've been running about at that 10 to 12% here the last couple years. And so what I would rather see is some of that play out and then figure out the staffing plan, because we do want to keep people here. We don't want them to start looking for other jobs because they think their job is tenuous. And so that's still our goal, is to keep the people who are here that aren't retiring or didn't have a family situation, that a spouse gets a job somewhere else, those typical things that happen in the hiring period. But I think in the elementaries, I would say we probably hired 10 to 12 last year at the elementary level, and maybe the same the year before. I think that's a pretty safe guess. If some other administrator has a better, more on-target guess, you could, sure.
Been between 30 and 40 K-12.
Yeah, K-12's
And
been,
all positions, all
yeah.
certified positions.
So you don't have a crystal ball, I mean, because things can
Yep.
change, but in all likelihood, in a normal year of
we would be able to
retirements
accommodate
and-
the Roosevelt staff,
Yeah,
which is the
there's-
one I know that's
yeah,
hanging out
yeah.
there for sure.
So I guess that's kind of the message,
Yep.
but you don't have a crystal ball to predict that.
Right. And we don't want anybody to, retire because they think they're, retire when you want to retire, that sort of thing. But I think it's reasonable to expect that there will be some retirements. There will be some people who, have other circumstances that pull them away from Watertown, or, and we feel pretty good about. But obviously at this point in time, I couldn't, a staff member from Roosevelt, if they came up to talk to me, I wouldn't be able to tell them 100% certainty on January 8th that we're gonna have all those positions, but I also feel pretty good that on April 15th, I'll be able to tell them that.
So hypothetically, come April 15th, if we have the number of vacancies available to keep everyone, have there been any conversations yet about what the plan would be moving forward for how staff would get placed? Just because I'm thinking of it like if I were this teacher support staff, I don't know that I'd really want to just be hand plucked from my school and thrown into another one with no say. Will there be a process that they get to put in for
Yeah.
what's open ahead of others, or
Yeah,
is that
that's-
down the road? Because
It is a little bit down the road, mainly because I'm just gonna say these are no knowledge of anything, but just an example of if we had 5 second grade teachers retire, that makes the plan look a little bit different than if there's 1 kindergarten, 1 first, and so until we start knowing a little bit more about where some of the openings are and how the pieces might fit together, I'm a little hesitant to, but I mean, we're looking at some different ways to do that. Because we've had really 3 meetings with staff. I met with the McKinley staff separately, just because this was new to McKinley. Roosevelt got a full dose of me, unfortunately, last spring and this fall already. But this particular plan is a little bit different from what we were proposing last year, so it's new to McKinley and their world. So I met with that staff, and then I had 2 open meetings for all staff prior to Christmas break, and a lot of the questions are really on, what does this mean for me? But some things that have been expressed are, so if you think about the 3 remaining schools that each would pick up a section, now if you're sitting at the others, do I want to just be the lone, kind of the lone person coming in from the outside, and how does that work? So I mean, there's a lot of factors we will consider. You've got some of the ELL training at Lincoln, and do we have others who would be able to go there or willing to get trained? Certain things like that we're just going to have to look at that. Plus, balancing veterans with new staff and trying to get a good balance of teams at all the grade levels are things that'll be looked at. But I'm hesitant to say anything too concrete, because we really would like to have a little more knowledge about what we're, I kind of think of that, I don't know, for those of you old enough to have sat at little restaurants, it seemed like there's always those little puzzles where there was 1 square open, and then you move the 1 square, and then there's an open square. I mean, it looks a little bit like that, at least in my brain right now, but I know there are others who are better at putting it into more digestible format.
And you said the map for kind of that co-op's putting together right now, you said, would we be able to see that potentially before the vote takes place? You know, if
Sorry,
that's
did I
next
skip? I
month?
skipped over talking about that.
You
didn't I,
did,
Tricia?
yeah.
You want to go back? I'm sorry. So, thank you for bringing up the map. Could have waved at me. I've been making, for those who have attended a meeting on this, I've been making a motion like this. And that was my version of, you know, you've got Jefferson, Millette, and Lincoln left, and somehow carving a district or a boundary area out that each of the 3 remaining schools is separate and there. And so we talked, the term neighborhood concept was used last year, and our idea would be is that however the boundaries are drawn, that when I say neighborhood, that at least the 3 remaining schools would have their immediate neighborhood still part of their attendance area, so that if I live, you know, I don't know if 6 blocks is the right number or not, but where I might walk or ride my bike, that still is where I'm probably going. And so that's kind of one of those core things that we're keeping in mind with that. I made this motion because it seemed like the easiest way. We'll see what co-op comes up with for a draft of that, but needless to say, you know, you're essentially somewhere, the McKinley and Roosevelt boundary areas have to be incorporated into the 3 remaining now with the way this plan is drawn. I think one other piece I'd like kind of to just make a comment if I could, and I'll still answer more questions. But you know, a question that might be asked is what happened to the partner school plan? If you were so certain that that was the plan, that you brought it to the board in the spring, and at the time we were tasked with further study, and I think part of our responsibility as district admin and then as school board members is to consider what is amenable to the community. What can we accomplish with what we have at hand? And it's one of the things I like most about school boards is they are nonpartisan, and so all 5 are elected to represent all in the community, rather than, you know, when you follow maybe state and national politics that gets a little bit more partisan. And so I think, you know, it's our responsibility as the district admin to bring you something for consideration that shows we listened. I know one of the things that people talked about last year that was a struggle to kind of accept was the chunking of our, you know, where we had two as you went through. We feel like we listened, addressed that with where you're still going to get to say, I attended Jefferson, I attended Millette, I attended Lincoln, and kind of have that feel of this is where I attended elementary school. We left that, and then we really think that the early childhood enhancements is something that our community is in need of, and the benefits to early interventions and early childhood education are well known, and we just think that by creating that spot, we are really offering an opportunity to the Watertown School District, but also to the community, that it can turn something that maybe starts out as, oh my gosh, we need to close an elementary school, and we've come up with a plan that where we listen to the public, and we created something that I think really can be a great benefit and something that that we'll be proud of when it's all done.
Any other questions, comments?
I'm reading this correctly, we're actually gaining sections.
Yes.
So we're at 41 last year, 43, I'm not counting kindergarten, which is 10 sections. Plus we're adding the preschool, so we're actually gaining sections overall.
And I think that's through the better utilization of the facilities is really what we're doing there. We're able to staff it. For the board, just kind of a timetable, what I have for action items in between now and the February board meeting. I intend to essentially, hopefully a little more concise version than you got tonight, but narrate the slides and send those out. We will put that on we have an elementary page off of our webpage. Those will be on there, and then when I send those out, I'll point people towards those. Last year I did have a meeting with Roosevelt families. I would intend to do that with McKinley families because of the change that is different from last year, where McKinley wasn't really involved in they were involved in the partner school plan, but not really in the type of redistribution that's involved here. And then when we get our kind of our draft of those boundaries, would convene that elementary committee again to take a look at those before we would bring boundaries to you in February. And then our plan, this is kind of a first reading of it, would be to bring this back in February as an action item, having met those other action items in between January and February school board meetings.
So boundary maps before that vote then?
We would take a look at the boundary map because the boundaries require, or the policies require first, second reading. So we would probably have that boundary map for a first reading then in February as well, which would then push it to a March approval. So that we have to keep those things moving with the preschool screen, all those other dates they don't stop if we delay some of this. So at least to give an attempt to keep the process moving.
I have more of a comment and observation, and I've shared this with you, Dr. Danielson, but I'll just go on record officially that as you guys are creating the rezoning and boundaries for what the schools will be, just the more I thought about it, and you've answered these questions, but so it's thrown out there again, just making sure that we're being very intentional about those boundaries so that, we are eliminating McKinley and Roosevelt as 1 through 4 schools, pushing all those students up into the other 3, that Millette isn't just adding pressure to it, that it really creates more equitable schools. That's really gonna be important here. I just don't want to see more pressure put on Millette, and if we can make it more even across the board for all 3 of those remaining schools, that's really important to me to see.
Yeah, and I think the reason I always people are sick of me doing this, but did this was that it kind of, provides when you go that way, it provides a cross section of our community at each school. And the big thing we want to make sure in this time of redrawing them is we want to make sure that our schools are full to because that's what we were starting to hit was we were not able to generate, for a 2-section school, we weren't able to generate 2 sections worth of kids in the current boundary areas. And so we probably, even if this wouldn't have all started, we were due for a redraw of the boundaries, even if we'd have stayed at 5 schools. So that's been a component that's really risen out of this whole discussion.
And then just one more clarifying question, so if I understood right, sorry, I keep talking.
No, it's okay.
The title funding, you said the hope is that all 3 schools would be, I wrote this down somewhere and now I lost it.
Targeted assistance.
Targeted assistance,
yes.
Not whole school, right?
We don't,
not school-wide.
Some
Not
estimates,
okay.
and I know Ms. Clausen has been working with the state on, we have to, in order for us to keep the back end of the process going, we have to do some work with the state, and I know as she's been working through with estimates, that's what we think, but obviously without an exact boundary. But our belief is that all 3 schools will qualify for at least targeted assistance, Title I, which would provide them with title interventionists.
Thank you.
questions or comments? Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, we will move along to item 6.1 with approval of the bills. Is there a motion to approve?
I move we approve the bills.
Second.
Motion by Moulton, second by Iverson. Questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Bills have been approved. And we'll move into personnel, 14.4.
Yeah, thank you. You'll see that we have 2 resignations, and one of the resignations is also a hire. We had a custodian switching positions with us, so there's a change in the pay rate there, so we needed a resignation and a hire, and I believe the other one's student teach, so.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Rossman,
Second.
second by Lohr. Questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's been approved. Item 6.2.2, contract recommendations.
Okay, you've got the contract recommendations there. Note that we were able to hire our last 2 family support specialists in conjunction with our attendance grant, and those, along with the one who was hired in December, have started and are split up at the K-6, the middle school, and the K-6 is located, the actual position is located at Roosevelt, and then one at the middle school and one at the high school. So we're excited to get them rolling here, and they will really probably take off with their communications and their work here when the start of 3rd quarter.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the contract recommendations and addendum.
Motion by Lohr. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Rossman. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's been approved. Move to the stipend requests.
Yes, we have 3 staff members that we have requests for stipend there on total of 15 credits.
Is there a motion to approve the stipends?
I'll make a motion to approve stipends.
Motion by Rossman,
Second.
second by Lohr. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Stipends have been approved. We'll move to the authorization of the driver's ed fees.
Yeah, for 2024, we are looking at charging $355 per student. This is a $5 increase from last year. Again, the Aero Education Foundation has previously been covering 75% of tuition costs for students that qualify for free and reduced meals, and I do anticipate that they are likely to continue that. Last year, we had 24 students that paid the reduced fees due to that.
Yes, that board meeting is tomorrow, but they're indicated that they will.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Iverson,
Second.
second by Moulton. Questions, comments?
I think we're adding a teacher as well there for driver's ed, which is good.
Yes, I think we had another staff member who indicated that they have their driver's ed certification and would like to help, so yes.
Because we always have high numbers.
Yeah.
And a special thank you to Aero Education Foundation, of course. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion has been approved. And we'll move to the open enrollment requests.
Yes, I have 2 open enrollment requests there for your consideration. Recommend approve.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the open enrollments.
Motion by Lohr,
Second.
second by Rossman. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Open enrollments have been approved. 13/28/10.
Yes, 1/13/28/10 there for your approval.
Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve 13/28/10.
Motion by Rossman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lohr. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's been approved. We'll turn it over to Dr. Danielson.
Yes, a reminder, the legislative session gets underway tomorrow, the State of the State, 1 o'clock. You can catch that on PBS or online. No school for Watertown on Monday, January 15th for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And then we have an early dismissal at 12:30 on January 19th. At that early dismissal, we will be awarding our Staff Members of the Year. So excited about that. And then I just wanted to read this. I got this from the executive director of ASBSD, Associated School Boards of South Dakota. Dr. Danielson, during the previous school year, Your students and district achieved something academically that less than half of the state's public school districts did by scoring above the state average in all 3 subject areas: English language arts, mathematics, and science of the annual state assessments. The Board of Directors and staff members, Associated School Boards of South Dakota, congratulate your district students, staff, administration, and school board for this accomplishment, as we believe it evidences high academic performance in your district. We commend everyone involved in this achievement for their efforts and look forward to seeing the future academic successes of your district. So again, congratulations on your district's academic achievement and best wishes for continued success this school year. Respectfully, Douglas R. Wormadall. So,
Very nice.
yeah,
Nice
that
way
was
to conclude the meeting.
That was a nice way to conclude the meeting.
Okay. Is there anyone that has anything to report to the superintendent? Item 7.2. Okay. Then, with executive session, I guess that concludes our portion here for this evening. You're welcome to exit. Do we need a motion and a second then to go into executive session?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session. Second.
Motion by Lohr, second by Rossman. Questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we are now in executive session.
I got a minute.